I never thought I'd be the target of a corporate witch hunt. I was the guy who brought donuts on Fridays, covered for others when they were sick, and never missed a deadline. But apparently, being decent doesn't protect you when snakes wear suits. Before I dive into this mess, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button if you're into real, raw workplace stories that'll make your jaw drop. Trust me, this one will. It started 2 months ago. Our department got a new manager, Tara. She was sharp, polished, and ruthless in a way that wasn't immediately obvious. At first, everyone loved her. She remembered birthdays, brought in homemade banana bread, and complimented people on their outfits. But behind closed doors, she was different. I noticed it the first week. She'd schedule one-on-one meetings with team members, and they'd come out looking shaken. Rumors began circulating. One guy from marketing claimed she'd pressured him to take the blame for a delayed project he hadn't touched. A quiet girl in data analytics? Gone after 3 weeks. No explanation. I kept my head down. I thought if I just worked hard and stayed out of the politics, I'd be safe. Then my best friend at work, Jeremy, stopped talking to me. I mean completely. We used to eat lunch together every day, laugh about the absurdity of corporate life, vent about metrics and client calls. Now? Radio silence. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. Something was seriously wrong. And then, I got an anonymous email. One sentence. No signature. Watch your back. They're setting you up. I stared at the email for what felt like hours. Watch your back. They're setting you up. My first instinct was paranoia. Maybe it was spam. Maybe it was a sick joke. But something in my gut told me it was real. The message came from a burner address, no name, no profile, just a blank account that vanished an hour later. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, replaying every interaction from the past month. Had I done something wrong? Missed something obvious? Was it Tara? Or someone else? The next morning, I came into the office early, trying to act normal. Jeremy was already there, sitting at his desk with headphones on, avoiding me like the plague. I walked past his cubicle and paused. He flinched when he saw me looking at him, flinched. Like I was the threat. That's when I knew. He wasn't ignoring me. He was afraid of something. Around 10 a.m., Tara called a department-wide meeting. Just a casual check-in, she said with that smile that never reached her eyes. She praised everyone for their hard work, thanked a few people publicly, and then, like it was nothing, announced an internal audit was being launched. Just to ensure compliance with our new reporting structure, she said sweetly. But the looks on people's faces said it all. This wasn't a routine audit. And then she turned to me. I'll be starting with your files, Alex. Since you've handled some of our bigger accounts lately. My stomach dropped. Everyone turned to stare. No one said a word. And in that moment, it hit me like a freight train, they were building a case. Against me. I couldn't breathe. Everyone was staring at me, trying not to look like they were. I forced a smile, nodded, and said, sure. Just let me know what you need. Inside, I was spiraling. I spent the next 2 days obsessively reviewing everything I'd worked on, every file, every email, every project log. I couldn't find anything. Nothing that could be twisted or used against me. But that didn't matter. Because I started to notice things were off. Files I knew I had saved were missing. Documents had been edited, subtly, but enough that someone could say I misreported data. A spreadsheet from a client account had a glaring mistake in it, one I never made. I pulled up the revision history. The timestamp showed it had been changed after hours. But it was logged under my credentials. I filed a quiet IT support request to ask if there had been any suspicious activity on my account. The guy said he'd look into it, but he sounded nervous. Like he didn't want to get involved. And then, things escalated. On Thursday, HR scheduled a routine performance review for me. It was short notice, and the tone was off, too formal, too cold. I sat in that room across from a woman who barely made eye contact, as she read off a list of concerns. Late submissions. Inconsistent data. Unprofessional communication with clients. It was all lies. All of it. But when I protested, she said, we'll be looking into this further. In the meantime, you're on temporary project suspension. I walked out of that room in a daze. My badge still worked. My email was still active. But my access to client files? Gone. And when I turned around at my desk, my team wasn't looking at me. They were avoiding me. except for one person. A junior analyst named Priya. She caught my eye and mouthed just 2 words. "Check printer." I didn't waste time. As soon as Priya mouthed those words, I got up and headed straight to the shared printer by the break room. My hands were shaking. I tried to act casual, but my heart was pounding like a war drum in my chest. The printer tray was empty. But just as I was about to walk away, the door to the supply closet next to it cracked open, and Priya stepped out, holding a small stack of papers. She didn't say a word, just pressed them into my hand and whispered, "You didn't get this from me." Then she disappeared down the hall. I slipped into the stairwell and looked at the papers. They were copies of internal emails. At first, I didn't understand what I was reading, but then it hit me. They were exchanges between Tara and someone else in upper management. My name was all over them. One thread stood out. "He won't see it coming. If we alter the data trail and cite behavioral issues, it'll hold up under review. Legal's already prepping documentation. Make sure IT logs match. I'll have Jeremy backdate the edits." I almost dropped the papers. Jeremy. My friend. My closest friend at work. He was helping them frame me. And Tara. Tara wasn't just setting me up, she was laying down a full-blown legal case. The goal wasn't just to fire me. It was to destroy me. Discredit me so completely that no one in the industry would ever hire me again. Suddenly, everything made sense. The missing files. The suspicious edits. The silence. The fear in everyone's eyes. They were all complicit, or too scared to speak. Except Priya. She had just risked everything to warn me. And that meant I wasn't entirely alone. But I had to act fast. Because if they were willing to fabricate evidence, they'd be ready to make me disappear next. I sat in my car during lunch, hands clenched around the steering wheel, staring at those printed emails like they were the smoking gun in a murder trial. They weren't just plotting to fire me. They were crafting a narrative. A version of me that didn't exist, reckless, dishonest, unstable. And Jeremy. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. We had spent years working side by side. Late nights, missed holidays, impossible deadlines. I thought we were brothers in arms. But it was all fake. I knew I needed help. I couldn't win this alone. So I did something risky. I called my cousin Nate. He's a cybersecurity consultant and frankly, a bit of a digital wizard. I told him everything. Sent him the scans of the emails and asked him if there was any way to verify or trace where these edits had been made and by whom. He didn't even hesitate. "Forward me your login credentials and whatever system logs you have. If someone's spoofing your account, I'll find it." Back at my desk, I pretended to be working. Priya didn't look at me again. But she didn't need to. Her message was loud and clear, this was dangerous. That evening, Nate called me. "They've been remotely accessing your account through a proxy. Looks like it's coming from an internal IP address. Possibly Jeremy's workstation. Someone's been logging in under your name and editing files at night." He paused. "And Alex. They've also planted fake messages. Drafts in your sent folder that you didn't write. Stuff that makes you sound unstable. Aggressive. They're building a story that you're cracking under pressure." I felt sick. But now I had proof. Or at least the beginning of it. And suddenly, I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was becoming the liability they didn't see coming. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The halls were quiet, fluorescent lights flickering to life as I walked toward my desk. I had a plan now. Not a perfect one, but a start. And I wasn't going down quietly. I brought a flash drive with me, containing the emails Priya had given me, a screen recording of the fake files Nate had uncovered, and a copy of the login logs showing unauthorized access to my account. I also printed them all, old school style. In a corporate takedown, nothing beats hard evidence in black and white. I didn't go to HR. Not yet. Instead, I requested a 15-minute meeting with Michael, our director of operations. The man was cold, calculating, and notoriously risk-averse. If anyone in upper management could be swayed by documented liability, it was him. I walked into his office at 10:45 a.m. sharp. He didn't even look up at first. "Alex, I'm very busy. If this is about your performance review, I suggest." "It's not. It's about a fabricated case being built against me. And the legal exposure your department is about to walk into." He froze. I placed the flash drive and printed packet on his desk. "Before you say anything, I suggest you look at the IP logs, the forged documents, and the internal emails discussing how to set me up. If this goes to court, and it will if I'm terminated, these materials will be public." He looked at the stack. Then he looked at me, really looked. "You're saying someone in this department is forging records under your name?" "I'm saying Tara is orchestrating it. Jeremy's involved. And if you ignore this, you're complicit." For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then he slowly pulled the papers toward him and said, "Leave. Now. Don't talk to anyone." I didn't know if that was good or bad. But I knew one thing. The war had officially started. The rest of the day was a blur. Michael didn't say a word to me after our meeting. But I saw the ripples begin almost immediately. At noon, Tara was called into his office. She didn't come out for nearly an hour, and when she did, her face was pale. No smile. No charm. Just ice. She walked past my desk without even glancing at me. That was the first time I felt like I'd drawn blood. But I wasn't safe. Not yet. I left the office early, claiming a migraine. Truth was, I didn't trust what might happen if I stayed any longer. If they knew I had evidence, they'd move fast, and dirty. That night, Nate texted me again. I dug deeper. There's more. He'd pulled metadata from the fake drafts in my email and traced login activity to multiple timestamps after midnight. Whoever was accessing my account wasn't even being careful. Nate had also found chat logs, internal messages, where Jeremy had been privately bragging to another co-worker about a promotion being locked in once the dead weight is gone. Dead weight. That was me. It made me nauseous. But the next part? That's when the game shifted again. Nate forwarded a series of file access records that didn't match Tara's or Jeremy's accounts. Someone else had been snooping. Someone with limited access, trying not to leave a trace. The name? Priya. At first, I thought, no, not her. She warned me. She saved me. But maybe she was just playing both sides. Or maybe she was gathering her own ammo. I needed to know. So the next morning, I sent her a one-line message through our encrypted internal messenger. Coffee. Off-site. No questions, just a yes or no. A few minutes later, she replied, "Yes." We met at a quiet coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. I was there early, pacing outside, going over everything I'd learned, every betrayal, every fake document. When Priya walked in, she didn't look nervous. She looked ready. She sat down across from me and went straight to the point. "I know you saw my name in the system logs." I nodded, cautiously. "Why?" She pulled out her phone, turned it around, and hit play. An audio recording started. It was muffled, but clear enough. Jeremy's voice. "Once Alex is out, it's game over. I'll get the senior strategy role, and Tara moves up. HR won't question it if the data backs it up. Besides, he's too naive to fight back." My jaw clenched. I had suspected it, but hearing him actually say it, that hit differently. "I've been recording them for weeks," Priya said. "Meetings, hallway conversations, Slack messages. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't prove it, until they dragged your name into it." "Why help me?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because last year, they did the same thing to my mentor. She disappeared overnight, fired with no severance, no references. And no one asked questions. I promised myself if I ever saw it happening again, I wouldn't stay quiet." I stared at her for a long moment. She wasn't playing both sides. She was undercover, in her own quiet, brilliant way. "I've got emails, recordings, calendar invites, access logs. If we go to HR together, they can't ignore it," she said. "No," I replied. "HR's already been briefed. We need to go higher. Legal. External if we have to." Priya nodded. "Then we need to do this right." We agreed to compile everything, her recordings, my documents, Nate's data, for a formal whistleblower report. Not through internal channels. We'd go straight to the board. And if they tried to silence us? We had everything backed up in the cloud. The next 48 hours were a frenzy of silent coordination. Priya and I worked like spies in our own building, passing flash drives, sharing encrypted folders, meeting in parking lots and coffee shops. I looped Nate into the plan, and he helped organize all the evidence into a detailed timeline: who said what, who accessed what, when, and how it tied into the larger smear campaign against me. It was damning. The audio recordings alone were explosive. There was one where Tara admitted to forging email chains. Another where Jeremy openly discussed coaching another co-worker to witness my supposed erratic behavior. They even joked about how HR would never side with a guy who looks stressed all the time. I guess I did look stressed. Working 60 hours a week under constant pressure will do that to you. On Friday morning, we sent the full package, timestamped, annotated, legally formatted, to 2 inboxes, one for the company's general counsel, and one for the board's ethics review committee. We also BCC'd ourselves. And a personal lawyer I hired the night before. I was done playing defense. What followed was pure chaos. By noon, Tara was called upstairs. Jeremy followed not long after. No one returned to their desks. A hush fell over the office like a sudden storm. People whispered. I started. Someone asked me if I was okay. I just smiled and said, "Getting there." Around 2 p.m., I was summoned. But not to HR. To the executive floor. A place most of us never got to see. A woman from the legal department and one of the board liaisons were waiting. They were polite, professional, but dead serious. "We've reviewed the material," the legal rep said. "And you need to know, you did the right thing coming forward." Then she leaned in. "And this goes deeper than you realize." When someone from corporate legal says, "This goes deeper than you realize," you brace for the worst. I sat there, hands clasped tightly in my lap, as they explained what they'd uncovered in just a few hours of internal review. My case wasn't isolated. Not even close. Tara had built a pattern of targeting employees who either posed a threat to her advancement or had access to sensitive internal metrics. She manipulated reports, coached false statements, and leveraged fear to push people out. 3 of those people had quietly signed NDAs and disappeared without a trace, just like Priya's mentor. And Jeremy? He wasn't just helping. He was benefiting, massively. The review board had traced a series of internal promotions, shady bonus allocations, and project reassignments that followed every incident. Jeremy's career had accelerated unnaturally fast in just 18 months. He was Tara's fixer. Her inside man. And the worst part? HR had known, or at least, suspected. But every time something smelled off, Tara had preemptively painted her targets as unstable or insubordinate. She weaponized their silence and HR's fear of litigation. Until now. "We've temporarily suspended both Tara and Jeremy pending a full investigation," the legal rep said. "But we want you to know, we're treating this as a whistleblower case. You're protected. And so is Priya." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then they asked me a question I never expected. "Would you be willing to stay on, in a transitional leadership capacity? Help rebuild the culture you were almost destroyed by?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the late nights, the gaslighting, the humiliation, and the fact that no one, not one person other than Priya, had stood up for me when I was being picked apart like prey. But then I thought about the next person this could happen to. And I said, yes. Taking the transitional leadership role was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, I finally had a seat at the table. I was involved in shaping policies, vetting hires, and directly influencing the culture I had been nearly crushed by. But on the other hand, I was painfully aware of the scars I carried, both visible and invisible. My first official act was to establish an anonymous reporting system, something that never existed before. It was designed so no one else would feel trapped or powerless like I did. We also mandated unconscious bias training and conflict resolution workshops. Small steps, but necessary. However, the real challenge was rebuilding trust. Many colleagues avoided me. Some feared retaliation, others resented the chaos that my case had stirred up. Jeremy's old allies whispered behind closed doors, trying to undermine the changes I was pushing. One afternoon, I received an email with no sender address. The message was short. "You're not done. They're watching." The paranoia crept back in. But this time, I wasn't the same person. I had allies. I had proof. And I had a story that no one could rewrite. Slowly but surely, the culture began to shift. More people came forward with their own stories of unfair treatment. Our department, once a toxic battlefield, started to feel like a community. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was fighting with them, not against them. As the weeks passed, cracks began to show in the old guard. Tara and Jeremy's suspension stretched into a full investigation. Confidential reports leaked, quietly but surely, to trusted members of the team. The evidence against them was undeniable. What shocked everyone most wasn't just the sabotage, but the network of silence that had allowed it to flourish. HR was shaken. Several managers resigned quietly, unwilling to be part of a culture so deeply compromised. I got calls from former co-workers, people who had been too scared to speak before, now ready to tell their stories. The floodgates opened. I kept hearing the same thing: "Thank you for standing up. We thought no one would." One afternoon, during a team meeting, Priya spoke up publicly for the first time. She said, "We're not victims. We're survivors. And it's up to us to make sure this never happens again." The room erupted in applause. But despite the progress, the emotional toll was real. Every night, I wrestled with doubt. Was I pushing too hard? Was I becoming what I hated? Some nights, the silence of my apartment was louder than any office confrontation. The faces of those who had betrayed me haunted me. And yet, the faces of those who believed in me kept me going. Because change isn't easy. It's messy, painful, and sometimes lonely. But it's worth it. One day, about 2 months into the transition, I received a message that shook me to the core. It was from Jeremy. The email subject line, "I owe you an apology." Inside, he admitted everything: his role in the scheme, his jealousy, his fear of being overshadowed. He wrote about how Tara manipulated him, promising him promotions and bonuses that never materialized unless he played her game. He confessed to feeling trapped and ashamed but claimed he wanted to make amends. I read the message twice. Part of me wanted to rip it apart and burn it. But another part was curious. What did forgiveness look like here? Was it even possible? I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I sat with it. The truth is, betrayal hurts. But sometimes, understanding it is the first step toward healing. A few days later, I told Priya about the email. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and caution. "Don't rush," she said. "But if you decide to respond, keep your guard up." I nodded. The workplace that nearly destroyed me was changing, but the scars? They'd always be there. The following weeks were a roller coaster. I decided to respond cautiously to Jeremy's email. We exchanged a few messages, slow, careful. He didn't ask for my trust. He didn't expect forgiveness. But he admitted his mistakes and seemed genuinely remorseful. Meanwhile, the company was making headlines. Our scandal sparked a wider conversation about toxic workplace cultures in the industry. Other departments launched investigations. New policies were introduced at the corporate level. I was invited to speak at an internal conference about resilience, ethics, and standing up to injustice. All of this felt surreal. But the hardest part was still personal. I found myself replaying moments from those dark months: Jeremy's cold stares, Tara's smile that never reached her eyes, the silence of my co-workers. Healing wasn't linear. Some days were good, others, like a punch to the gut. Priya stayed my rock. Her quiet strength reminded me why I kept fighting. One night, after a long day, I looked in the mirror and realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was stronger. The final chapter of this nightmare, and my new beginning, came quietly. Tara and Jeremy were officially terminated. Legal proceedings were initiated, and the company promised to compensate victims of the toxic environment. Publicly, it was a scandal. Privately, it was a relief. I stayed on as the transitional leader for 6 more months, helping rebuild not just the processes, but the people. What struck me most was the resilience I saw every day. People who once hid their pain now spoke openly. Teams that had fractured were coming back together. Change, real change, was happening. But perhaps the most important lesson I learned? No matter how dark the storm, there is strength in standing up, in speaking out, and in fighting for what's right. If you've ever felt powerless in a toxic workplace, know this: you're not alone. And sometimes, the fight to save your career, and your sanity, is the fight that changes everything. If you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe and stay tuned. Because real life is messy, and sometimes, the best stories are the ones that show us how we survive. Thank you for listening.